I'd say where possible, make sure that AI hands and human hands have access to the same controls. And that helps customers feel okay giving AI the wheel because they know that they can get in there and fix the last 10% if they need to. One of the things that a lot of AI products do that I hate is they give you design that suggests open world, but it's not open world. It's a phone tree and a trench coat. The first thing that you need to consider as a PM is like, what's the kind of trust that you need to build with your customer? And what is the cost of messing up?
Hey everyone, welcome back to Future Proof. Today I sit down with Laura Burkhauser. She's the VP of Product at Descript. We talk about all things user interfaces in AI products, how to make them feel natural, how to make them feel intuitive, and how to give users a sense of control and agency while they're actually working in your product. For those of you who might not know, Descript is a script and video editor that allows you to take your recorded media, whether that be a podcast like this or a video, and edit the text in the transcript itself. They've more recently added many AI features in a new product area called Underlord. And Laura goes into some detail about how Descript has thought of Underlord in terms of giving users control and making sure that users feel like they have an open world to interact with rather than just a few set tasks like Siri or Alexa that they're constrained to when they're actually chatting with Underlord. So it was a super interesting conversation. I think you'll really benefit from hearing about how Laura is thinking about AI products, why language is such an effective user input model for so many of the interactions with the Descript, and also how to make sure that users still feel like they can edit exactly to their preferences and parameters, whether that be through prompt scaffolding or through direct human controls. Really excited about this and hope you learn a lot. All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to Future Proof, building AI products that last. Today I'm joined by Laura Burkhauser. She's the VP of Product at Descript. Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Ethan. Really excited to chat.
Awesome. Today, I really want to dive into sort of AI user interfaces. I think there's a lot of interesting conversations going on in the UX world about how to make user interfaces for AI feel more natural and intuitive. I'm sure you might have a lot of thoughts there. And I want to start today around control and making sure that users feel like they can control the outputs. We talk a lot on this podcast about how building an AI is so different because the outputs are non-deterministic. So there's all these different kinds of paths that your users can go down, whether or not you expect them. So how are you thinking about designing those interfaces that make users feel like they do trust that they're in control, even when the outputs might not be deterministic?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think when I think about like the folks who are listening to this podcast, I think that the answer to those questions probably depends a lot on what it is that you're making for your users. And what Descript does is we are an AI video app. And so we help people create podcasts, create videos, and basically publish creative work. And there are things that are harder about AI in creative workflows, and then there are like things that are like a little bit easier. So when I talk about like building AI products with people who are in fintech or health tech, I think about, oh God, what is like the problem of a bad outcome in finance or in health? And it's so bad. And so I really feel for my PM friends out there that are building in those spaces. And I think what's the worst thing that happens when, you're making a product launch video with an AI co-editor that it does a crappy job and you're mad at it, but you're like, okay, just revert and I'll do it myself. And so I think in those ways, like the kind of trust that you need to build, the first thing that you need to consider as a PM is like, what's the kind of trust that you need to build with your customer and what is the cost of messing up? Because I actually think that if the cost of messing up is high, there's like an ethical obligation to either limit the actual power of the AI in that workflow or to actually not try to overpromise and say, yeah, this is definitely going to work. You don't need to check our work. And so I just think it really depends on your domain. Now, in the creative domain, as I've thought about it at Descript, how do I help customers trust that they're in control, even when AI is doing a lot under the hood? One of the things that's great about Descript is we've been around for long enough that we don't give AI access to anything that you don't have access to. So in a lot of tools, if you start building an AI video editor now, you're probably going to start with an agent, which is great and smart. But unfortunately, because you haven't built a human editor behind it, you can get yourself pretty easily into a state where you've AI'd your way into something and you can't even human your way out of it. The only thing you can do is like start over. And that also means that like the AI has either got to just like 100% one shot it, or like you have to iterate into perfection, or you have to settle for less than perfection. And so I'd say where possible, make sure that AI hands and human hands have access to the same controls. And that helps customers feel okay giving AI the wheel, because they know that they can get in there and fix the last 10% if they need to. And often they still do need to. The other things that I think are like probably obvious to most people building is you need to give people an easy way to undo all of the changes like that AI can do. When we built Underlord, I came up with our design principles, and one of them that's really stuck is one that I take from video games. I say Underlord should be open world and infinite lives. And there's something about like playing a video game that's open world and infinite lives where you just feel really comfortable taking risks. Because, yeah, I'm going to go in this cave. What's the worst that could happen? Maybe I'll die, but I have infinite lives. And it also means like you don't feel like, oh, I've got to do it exactly this way. You can stop and pick apples from trees or look under rocks as long as you want to, or you can go directly to the main boss, whatever you want to do. And so when we built Underlord, what that principle means to us is that you can ask Underlord anything. This is one of the things that I think a lot of people discover. Okay, I'm totally getting off. This is why I don't like bulleted things. I'm just going to continue to monologue here. But one of the things that a lot of AI products do that I hate is they give you design that suggests open world, but it's not open world. It's a phone tree and a trench coat. It's like we actually allow for these 8 very specific workflows. And as long as that is one of the colors you want to paint with, you'll love using our quote unquote agent. But if you want to paint with a slightly different color, you're just SOL, right? There's nothing for you to do. And when we built Underlord, I should say we're still building it because this is very hard and it's going to take a while. But as we've been building Underlord, we've thought, no, Underlord is open world. It should be the AI co-editor that says yes to you. Whatever you want to do, we're going to try to do it, right? And so that's what the open world part of it means. But that means that, yeah, you're going to be encouraged to go out and try a whole bunch of stuff. And Underlord is going to nail some of it, and some of it is not going to nail. And so we need to give you the like courage to go out there and do that exploration by telling you like you have infinite lives. There's a revert button. There's a rollback button. It's right here. Anytime Underlord just starts doing something dumb, just roll back. Just roll right back. That rollback button is your friend. And really encouraging people to use that as one of the many tools that they have. So I think like when I think about control, I think about part of what control means is that it's AI that can do anything. It's AI that says yes to you. Part of control means infinite lives. Don't worry if you screw up. You can undo it really quickly. And then part of it is that first thing I talked about, which is, okay, what do you do when AI can get you 90% of the way there, but it can't get you the other 10? And that's where it's really helpful if you have human tools that can help someone get to the other 10. Otherwise, like eventually they're going to leave your platform and hire tools that can get them to 100%, at least before the models get good enough that they can really just one-shot all of this stuff immediately.
Yeah, I feel like now and until then, if your AI app can't expose those human controls, I feel like you end up with the same challenges of vibe coding, where you're like a few prompts in, and then you find that whatever you have created, at some point it just becomes difficult to edit for various reasons. Maybe it's like the context, or maybe it's like you just don't understand like the mechanics of the project anymore, but you might not have the controls to go in and say, I just want to change this one button, or I want to change this specific behavior. But because you've lost all of that in the vibes, so to speak, you don't have the controls anymore to like really dig in and modify that behavior. So
That's right.
I
You can
really
just
like
get
that idea.
yourself in totally insane states. And I do that every day when I vibe code.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm really curious about giving Underlord in Descript just access to everything, all of the controls that you can do in the editor. Was there like ever a tool or a function that you had to modify for Underlord to use, or you found that once Underlord had access to it, you actually didn't have some of those revert revertibility characteristics that you said was one of those core design principles. Tell
The
us a little
revert
bit about that.
Yeah. So luckily, we haven't run into the issue where giving Underlord these tools makes it difficult to revert. That's fairly easy to do technically. But I think like all the time, we run into this problem of, okay, we've given Underlord these tools, but it's not using them. What do we do about that? And sometimes this is the thing that's crazy about building in AI right now is in the old days, if something it was always just a matter of how much you wanted something, right? It's like most things, we knew what was technically feasible and what was technically not feasible. And then the conversation that you're having with your EM is this more important than the other stuff? How many people are you willing to throw at this? How long do we have? And you haggle about that. So it's, oh, you want this to work? It's going to cost you, PM. And that was the EM PM conversation, right? And those conversations are so different now. We give Underlord tools like a really obvious one is Underlord can add and modify layers on your canvas. So just things like you say, hey, can you I don't know, can you add 4 different generative media images to this scene and organize them in like a pleasing way and have them animate in a way that makes sense or whatever. And maybe you're very specific about the way you want that to happen, or maybe you're just vague. But the idea is that Underlord can arrange layers on your canvas. Underlord doesn't have the best taste all the time about how to organize layers on a canvas. And so sometimes it just does things where you're like, oh, wow, thanks for adding like all 6 of those things directly on top of each other. That is not usable to me. And I think like there you have a few options, none of them good, right? One of those options is, okay, we can add a lot of additional logic to the way that the tool works and the way that the agent talks to the tools. And the problem with that is it gets pretty brittle and pretty rules based, which then defeats the open world kind of stuff and limits your freedom. And so there's like a downside to that. But sometimes we've made compromises like that because we're like, look, we just can't, this is always such a bad, unexplainable outcome to a customer that like we do have to trade a little bit of the freedom to give Underlord some guidance about what is and is not okay. Then there's like stuff where you're like, okay, then there's this whole other kind of class of problems, or I guess I should like the same problem where I'll say, okay, what if I don't want to do rules based? What are my options? And like often the best option is, oh, you just wait for Claude 5 to come out. Wait for Opus 5. And you're like, okay, wait for Opus 5. And it's, oh yeah, just as general intelligence gets better, it will know like that you don't add 6 layers on top of each other. And so you should just wait for that day and build the agent actually not in this strict way that tells it what the rules are, but in this really open and flexible way so that it immediately benefits from the gains of general intelligence while retaining that open world mentality. And so there are other places in the product where we're like, yes, we are going to withstand a little bit of pain right now because we think over time this is just going to fix itself.
That's super interesting. Yeah, and it's interesting you reference that because I think we've asked a number of guests on this podcast, how do you deal with like this looming possibility of just better models like very rapidly, and how do you actually plan around that and build it? But I love what you said about how you can withstand like some number of issues that may come from just giving the agent access to more things in anticipation that it's going to just get better as the underlying model improves. Obviously, that probably has to be guarded with some amount of safety. And to your point, bad user experiences, you don't want to make those front and center in your product. So I'm actually curious, like how in Descript, like how do you encourage users to understand like what Underlord is really good at and what Underlord is not so good at? And like how, yeah, I guess how do you guide users into sort of the right types of interactions that you want them to be having inside of your product?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd say is it's hard. It's hard. Everyone out there who's building these products knows that it's hard. I have a few things that we've done besides just the standard legalese cover your ass. AI can make mistakes that you like put in there. But what we do is I call it like stacking the deck. But what it is in every moment where you can introduce a starter pill or a template or inspiration, anything from in product, like I said, starter pills. So, like on our homepage, you can turn slides to video. So let's take turn slides to video. Slides to video is a really exciting thing that Underlord can do. You give it like a PDF of your deck and it will create a video for you. And again, this is very open world. It's not a wizard that does it the same time every way. You can say, I want this to be 10 minutes in Chinese with an avatar and generated media in a storybook style. But that still makes it sound like there's clear parameters, but like you can describe slides to video however you want to, and we'll be able to do it. And so when we're like, okay, so what should the slides to video button on home look like? What should it do? And should it just like automatically do something and make it magical, like a pretty good guess of what the average slides to video person would want? And I'm like, I don't think I want to do that, because I want to suggest to people that like one of our differentiators is how free you are to describe exactly what slides to video means to you. But at the same time, the customer isn't necessarily super creative. They don't know that's even a possibility of how slides to video might work. But also, some of those things work better than others. And so what we decided to do is when you click slides to video, what it's going to do is fill out a prompt and show you exactly what the slides to video prompt is, and like how the prompt we've created works really well. So like when you do it that way, like you're going to get a great experience as a user, but we've also shown you like this is how we built this great experience. These are the kinds of parameters we put in our prompt, and you can go in there and change out Chinese for French. You can go in there. It gives people this scaffolding to be able to prompt well, knowing like these are the kinds of things that I'd love for you to experience. It does feel really good to have this kind of experience in Descript. And so that's one example of how we just like keep an open world, but stack the deck towards experiences that we feel more confident are going to just like really work for you, which especially for a new user or a first time user. Like I think you brought it back to vibe coding. And I think like this is really important. There's probably a time before and after you got your first cool thing with vibe coding. And the time before I got my first cool thing with vibe coding, I was like, yeah, I'm hearing a lot about vibe coding. Maybe it's something I know I should care about this. It seems super broken to me though. Then I one-shot vibe coded a working undo button for Descript, and I was like, holy shit, everyone should be vibe coding. Everyone on my team learn to vibe code now. Everyone at Descript learn to vibe code now. What is happening in the world? And so there's just, which by the way happened after Sonnet 4 came out. I was like, oh, there we go. There we go. That's it. That was the change we needed for someone like me to get value out of this. I needed the max mode. But that's like for new users, for users that haven't had that, oh, it is worth my time to go back and forth with this thing for 2.5 hours because sometimes I get something amazing. If you haven't had that moment yet, you really need that scaffolding. You need to stack the deck for those customers to try to get them to have the, oh, I maybe want to totally rethink the way that I'm making videos moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the idea of prompt templating or scaffolding as opposed to just merely suggestions. I see a lot of AI apps today. They just have a sort of a one-click button, but it's an impersonal, just general suggestion about how to use it. I love that idea of just give them the whole recipe and let them remix it however they'd like, using the best practices that you have tuned at Descript to make it really useful to your product. And it's especially interesting because I also hear about prompts being like a secret sauce as well. Like for some, like prompts are everything and like they want to safeguard that. And there's this whole community around like freeing prompts from the underlying AI agent tools. So that's super interesting. Giving control back to the users, it's another way of like naturally describing and making very visible and controllable like what the product is doing behind the scenes. So in a world where prompts are just, people are trying to extract them, people are trying to hide them, maybe the answer is to give actually more control back to users and let them customize it themselves.
Yes, that's certainly our take, especially when there are so many types of things that people may want to create in Descript. One of the things we're actually building is a really easy way for Descript users to save prompts and share prompts. And that way you can see, how are other people kind of one-shotting. It's been really cool to see the community that's formed around using these like vibe coding, vibe editing, vibe your life kind of tools. And I think giving people tools to be able to share best practices. I've seen like marketing communities form around how do we vibe market together. I've gotten the privilege of speaking at a couple of those communities. And I think building tools for communities that want to share best practices in this crazy time that we're in is pretty fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, really looking forward to that feature. I think that'll be really cool. I'm curious, jumping over to some of the latency and unpredictability in AI output. Sometimes I find myself using AI products and you're waiting a lot and you're waiting for the model to just generate tokens and think in front of you in some cases, which I find really funny in some instances. I'm curious, like, if you've factored that in to like how you design AI products at Descript. Is that something that you leverage? Do you generally see users just wait as output streams in, or is that something that you background? Curious how you all are thinking about that.
Yeah, a little bit controversially. And so I'd love customer feedback on this, but we had a discussion about while Underlord is working, should we block you from editing with Underlord? And we decided no, that actually we want it to feel like Underlord is truly your collaborator who's just working with you in the doc. And you and I can be in a doc at the same time. And do we occasionally step on each other's feet? Maybe if we're like deciding we're both going to edit the same paragraph at exactly the same time. But there's actually just like a lot of fun creative energy that comes out of having multiple people in the doc collaborating at the same time. And I think like what I've found, because I use this product every day now, is that while Underlord is working on some things, I'll often be doing other things that don't conflict with the thing that I've asked it to do. And that lets me get into like a flow state with Underlord where it's working on some of the stuff. It's generating a bunch of images for me, but I'm going through and I'm fixing the script here and there. I'm like doing a little bit of human moving and stuff. What I wish I could do is have it just, I'm creating my own roadmap here. I have full control over this, and yet I'm still expressing it as a wish. I wish I could stack requests just so that as I think about them, I can just be like, yep. And then when you're done with that, do this, and then do this, and then do this. And I can like interrupt it at any point and say, never mind, you effed up number one so much. I don't want you to continue to 2 and 3. But that's how I think about it. Yeah, because I find those waiting states to be difficult. I've noticed that since I've started vibe coding more and using AI tools more, my crossword streak has gotten much better because I find that I have 5 minutes of time here and there to look at my phone and do something dumb. Is that good for me? Probably not.
Yeah, I think like actually a lot of that waiting sometimes introduces some context switching. I'll start editing something in an AI app and then just leave it and then forget about it and then come back later. But it ends up being like just jumping in between a lot of different apps, waiting for different models to just build in the output. So that's super interesting. And I love that idea of like taking a more collaborative approach, like a truly like a co-pilot-like experience to the editor. And I hope really that we'll see more of that as things progress in AI products.
Yeah, I'll be really curious because I could also see it going the other way. Like that, and that's where I'm like, I don't hold myself to that because then the other thing I see is as we get these reasoning models that are really good, but aren't even aspiring to be particularly fast, what we're seeing is UI patterns or UX patterns that are like, I don't want to set the expectation that you should stick around while I'm doing this. And so instead, that might feel like you think about something like Devin where you give it a like a PRD and it's cool. I'm an engineer. I'll see you in a day. Give me a day to just think about this, but then it's going to work. And I think Claude Code is more like that too, whereas like Cursor is more, no, I'm in here, I'm in the files, you can be in the files, let's all be in the files together. And Cursor is definitely like my pick for whatever reason. I'm not sure if it's psychological or if there's like a principle behind it, but also because it tends to be fast enough to make that usable. But I could also see it going the other way, right? And we just build these UIs where, great, I'm Underlord, I'm your creative director. Give me your creative brief and then give me a day, man, and I'll get you something awesome. And that might be how this all kind of rolls out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think speaking of Cursor, I think they've recently announced background agents too, where you can kick off a task and have it background. And you could have many of those working in the same repository, all different branches of each other. And yeah, they could take a long time. I'm curious as we start to move towards this world where like multiple agents are working independently, maybe together, if there's like specific areas in UI that you can see there's a lot of opportunity here or things that you're excited about, like in terms of user experience that become possible once you have all of these multi-agent systems working together.
I don't actually know if I have a great. So the question is just as you have multiple agents all working together in a project, what are the UI patterns that help customers like reason with that or make sense of it? Is that right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah. Or yeah.
yeah. I think you can extend I think it can be helpful when you're able to. One of the things you can do to help users out, right? Because we're all going through this insane change in how we work with computers. Some of us not. Some of us are like right at the beginning of it, and that's just what their expectation for what all this will be. And I am so excited to see those people like come into the world and to hear what they think. I think like for the group of people where you're also thinking about shepherding change for a lot of people who are doing this work right now, like one of the questions I always ask myself is how do we do this today with people? And can we copy those patterns and use them so that they immediately make sense to people today? And I think, like in a multi agent world, I think you can extend the creative collaborator metaphor and get into you have a team of people working in your doc and they have different expertise and they work on different timelines, but they're all in here in Descript together, like helping you make an amazing video. And you can talk to them, you can comment with them, you can see what they're doing, you can check in on their work, you can give them feedback exactly the way that you would a team, like a really productive team. Or if not exactly the way, in ways that help you feel comfortable operating in this new kind of paradigm.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's really interesting, like you connecting it to existing patterns of work and how people are already used to working together. I feel like that has surprised me a little bit as AI product development has continued. That like we just like Devin is a good example actually, where that's just a product that you just work with Devin as if it's like one of your coworkers or if it's your intern or something like that. And that's like an unexpected outcome for me. I maybe would have expected more like hidden AI features or something like that. I'm curious, do you see those human sort of patterns continuing to emerge for AI? Will we progress beyond like the chat model, like the typical chat GPT interface and agents, humans one-to-one correspondence? Or yeah, what do you think is like maybe the progression of interfaces for AI?
I have a few different thoughts here because I think like you talk about it like progressing beyond, but I actually think that we've been for the last 5 years before chat came about in the world of like pre-chat. And that's where like when you think about the Underlord product that Descript released about a year ago, it was not chat. It was a parameterized toolbar. So for example, like we had a create clips button. You would click and we still have this like for now. You click create clips and it says how many clips do you want and what should the layout be and any topics specifically that you want these clips to be about and you say, yeah, okay, that sounds great. I've answered your 3 questions. Go make me some clips. And as soon as we released that, people were like, I love this, but I wish I could give it this additional context so that it did a better job at my clips. And at the time, we're like, yeah, us too. We can't do that, but we can see how we will be able to. And we got enough of those requests that we're like, wow, we're immediately going to need to build the thing that kills this, and it's going to be chat because what a parameterized toolbar wants to be is an open world agent that can understand context, whether it's like the 5 blank parameters that, whether it's 5 things that it's easy to create buttons for, or whether it's just, no, the context that you need is this freaking Slack thread that's 300 messages deep about like why our clips so far haven't been good. And I just need you to like read all of it, internalize it, understand it, and know that when you're making these clips, right? And so I think that progressing beyond chat, which I'll get back to, is interesting because like the reason that chat exists is not because people are too lazy to come up with designs, but is actually because like language is the tool that humans have developed over tens of thousands of years to become the most efficient way to transfer ideas between each other. And we now can just use that language to talk to computers. And so one of the ways that will obviously, it's so obvious it's not worth saying, but I'm still going to say it because we got time, that chat will turn into talk, right? Where it's so much easier to talk to your computer than it is to type to it. And its voice was supposed to be big 10 years ago, but only, again, to me, like the problem with things like Alexa and Siri is they were the phone menu in a trench coat thing where they're like, oh yeah, we've got voice. Really hope you only have 5 kinds of things you want to say to Siri or Alexa. And you're like, okay, I keep hearing voice is big and it sucks. And it's no, but now voice is big because now you can talk to assistants that understand anything and can really act on that with the intelligence comparable to a human. And so I think like chat and voice are not going away because I don't see humanity developing a faster way to communicate ideas than the one that it's spent tens of thousands of years developing. However, there's still something missing, right? And that's tactile pointing to things, right? That's the other way that I have a 1-year-old and that's what they do. They haven't figured out language yet. And so what they do is they point to things and they shout. And I think my question is like, what is the equivalent to pointing at something and shouting? And actually, I know what it is because I do it in Cursor all the time. It's taking a screenshot and writing LOL and hoping that Cursor is smart enough to know, wow, I really messed up that request because Laura just took a screenshot and said LOL. But I find that's often what you're wanting to do is just point and say, you need to make this better. And so at Descript, those are UI patterns that we're trying to figure out. What is the equivalent of make this better? Just make this. How do you help Underlord to understand what this is and give it eyes to see? And so, yeah, I'm like, what was the original question? But, when will we move beyond chat? I think we'll move beyond chat in that we will supplement chat and voice with new ways of pointing to things, with pointing the attention of the agent to different things and explaining to it how you want it to change this, which may be some combination of voice and then pictures that you draw or things that you move around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that idea. What you really pointed out, which is that language is the best at communicating ideas. It's the best programming language, it turns out, and the best user input. In many kinds of tasks, like that just is the case.
I guess like eventually you'll just be able to plug something into your brain and it'll see the neurons fire. And then we won't have to deal with the inconvenience of language. We can transcend it.
Just completely symbolic, non-lingual thinking. The computer knows what we want before we even know how to ask it.
Oh, God.
Laura, really appreciate your perspective and your time sharing kind of your lessons from Descript and how you guys are thinking about AI. Really appreciate you coming on the pod.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure, Ethan. Great conversation. And thanks for listening to, I'm like, I don't know if I have anything to say about this. And then I just monologued for 50 straight minutes. So thanks for listening to all that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura.
All right.
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube to get all the latest episodes. And to view our past episodes, visit us at useparagon.com/futureproof.